This is create a mastermind, a masterclass, or a 5-day challenge. And so today, Mason is going to be our facilitator, and he is actually facilitating his own material, and we're going to let him tell you about that. I'm Kathy Benner, passive income coach, and I just want to review the steps to starting your own. Number one is you have to, of course, write out your framework and decide what problem it is that you're going to solve in your masterclass. And then step number 2 is choosing what platform you want to use. And we've been talking about the hardware part today before we started recording. But when we talk about the software part, there's all kinds of programs out there. And all of us on this call, we all prefer Zoom. And a lot of your audience is already comfortable with Zoom. So why reinvent the wheel? So this works for what we're doing. And then step number 3 is you have to decide once you're ready to go live, you know what problem you're solving, you've got your framework on what topics you're going to cover, you know what platform you're going to use, then how are you going to set your price? Is this going to be a free meetup, masterclass, mastermind to use at the top of your funnel, you know, the free step to get folks to tap in, to get to know, like, and trust you? Or is this something that you're going to put out there for a fee? And then from there, we have to figure out, are we going to do some VIP offers? And if so, what are we going to charge for those? And what is included in the VIP offer? And then how are we going to create our landing page and our invitations so that we can get folks to realize that we're doing this? Little side note, I got a beautiful email the other day. It was the most perfect landing page. She typed it right inside the email. She didn't have some big fancy platform with pictures and buttons and, and all of this stuff. She just typed the thread right in the email, bolded some of it, italicized some of it, made it interesting to read, popped a picture in there, and that was her invitation landing page. And it was very simple and sweet and one page, and I loved it. Anyway, so you need to create your landing page or your invitation, how you're going to get it out there. And then finally, launch day, where are you going to post your replays for the folks that are watching and listening in? And then how are you going to follow up and test and measure your results so that you can go back and tweak what you did on the front end to make it even better the next time around? So those are the steps. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mason. And this is session 2 of his 5 sessions. And so Mason, over to you.
All right. So let's see. Oh, I need you to allow me to share.
Oh, so sorry. Now let me figure that out for those that are watching. Okay, now here is what I think I know. And let's see if we can find you under participants. Mason, what I think I know on here is I've made you
maybe a panelist,
a co-host. So let's see if that now works. You should have the same things I have. Okay, perfect.
Let's the setup and slideshow from beginning. There we go. There we go. Great. Technology. Okay, so as we said, this mastermind is based loosely on the book that I'll be putting out this fall. It's an analogy. It's a guided analogy. I understand how we got to this point. To be quite honest, and I said this last time, I'll repeat it real quick. This literally did start with me waking up with a dream. I was in a job that I could tell you on a resume how I got there, but I was working in a steel mill, worst job I've ever had. And I really wondered, how the heck did I get to this point in my life? It just didn't make sense. So we're going to break this down. This is the second of 5 sessions. And like I said, this is for the person, this was me, still is many days. How did I get to where I'm at? It doesn't mean there's anything bad, but how did I get to where I'm at? And our goal is to provide a relatable analogy to kind of break things down. Last time we talked about the framework, waking up, and basically trying to establish a construct that I was using for this analogy and the significance of these things are. So Now, let's talk about this. I need to move. There we go. We're going to talk about your unlocked potential. There's two key things we'll talk about today. We're going to go a little deeper. One of them is understanding your story. When you ask people, tell me about yourself, somewhere in there, their resume is going to slip in, because that's how many, if not most people, define themselves. And I'm going to hear some part of your resume in there. And I may or may not hear anything deep. Okay, so the other thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about your satchel. I'm going to explain this a little bit later, but this is something we all have. We don't all recognize we have. So, and I am going to draw in on you guys later on, but let's talk about understanding your story. Okay. You need to understand, let me rephrase this. I feel you should understand where you came from, where you're at now. Okay. Your past has led you to here. Good and bad has led you to here. Now the question is, can you have that conversation with yourself so you understand how you got here? Okay. There are things you do or don't do. And many of those are based on things that happened in the past. The question is, the challenge is, if you don't understand that, it's guiding you and you're not guiding it. Big difference. It's guiding you. You've just given up your hands, oh well, versus you guiding it. Okay. And it's a lot more than a, hey, tell me about yourself. Because once again, someone says, tell me about yourself. I'm going to tell you some cutesy little things, and I'm going to somewhere put it in my resume, and that's it. Okay. That's not what we're talking about. Okay. There are two versions of this story. Now, there's a version that right now I will tell you guys in public. Tell you all about myself, but that is a cleaned up, pretty version. Depending on my level of comfort with vulnerability, I may share one or two little things, and that's fine. Nobody's business, except it is your business. Then there's a story. That's the one that's not pretty. It's painful. It hurts. That you would only tell your best friend of 30 years. And I say that because I've got some friends over 30 years. We went to school together. And we know all about each other. But there's versions of my story that I will only tell them. The thing is, and I'll speak just for myself, the version that I only tell them drives my actions all the time. And I can use that to control where I'm going, or I can let it drive me off whatever physical or emotional cliff they want to. Okay. So the question you have to ask yourself, which one has more impact on you? And I don't know if that's the same answer for everybody. So here's my challenge. You know, I cannot, it's funny, talk about technology, I cannot see my slides. Oh, go back up. There you go. So here's my question for you. There's your story in your resume, and there's who you are versus what you do. And it happens. So my challenge question for somebody, believe it or not, I'm sitting here playing my computer screen, is, I mean, Kathy's more comfortable. I know this, she's itching. But I'm going to bug Debbie. Do you want to share me your resume story? That's the nice one you can share in public. And then do you understand what I mean by the difference between your resume story, the pretty one, versus the, I'll say the word ugly. I'm speaking for myself. Some of my personal story is what I would consider ugly. It's ugly because it's painful. And some of it's ugly because I wasn't a nice person to myself or to others. So that's the story I'm dealing with. Well, my question is, Debbie, so what's your resume story, Debbie? If I said, hey, tell me about yourself, if you're willing to share, of course, I've cornered you. Well,
Am I still muted?
Nope, you're good.
I'm good. I'm practicing using the little square up there that says mute and unmute from being down below. So what's your question again?
Well, in this case, I'm trying to be nice, working towards understanding your story. So my question is, if I were to ask you, Debbie, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
That's my question.
So you're at, so my is, do I tell you the nice side or do I tell you the bad side? Right?
I don't know. What's your purpose? What do you want to share? What do you feel comfortable with? All I said was, on the screen I wrote, share your resume story, because that's always the nice version. My question for you is, and you don't have to share anything you're uncomfortable with, tell me about yourself. That's all. Just tell me. You're in a group. Okay. People say this all the time. Hey, Debbie, tell me about yourself.
Well, you know, what I enjoy is a memory that we created a week ago. And that is the fact that I got to spend time with my 9 grandchildren. I'm a grandma of 9, and I love them every chance I get to be with them. But I'm also, my husband the other day said, hey, Mrs. Farmer, how are you doing out here today? Because I was out in the garden. So, you know, I like to consider myself a fun-going person, and someone that people enjoy being with me. And I'm taking this right out of here. So, but, you know, I didn't have a good start in life. So what did I do with it? I grew from it. And right now, that's what I'm working on. I want to help other women grow from a dark side of their past. And wow, that sounds great. I got to remember that.
Write it down quickly. Write it down. Pause right here. Write that down. Whenever I say it to myself, I know I have to write that down, because that was a good phrasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, really, wow. Hello. So, but I don't know. Does that answer your question for now, anyways?
Sure. Like I said,
okay. It's what I want to say.
The point of this is I want people to start understanding your story. Mm-hmm. I'm putting you in a spot by saying, tell me your resume story, which is always the cleaner, nicer version. But in the background, I hope I planted a seed. You realize, okay, but there's another story that I have to better understand. And I'm gonna pick on you, Linda, in just a moment, but I'm gonna share one. I'm gonna share something. So I work with this young lady, and very smart, very competent, okay, very shy and very insecure. And we deal in logistics. And I was talking to her one day, and she was feeling kind of like she wants to go for promotion, but she was hesitant. I said, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your background. And she said, well, I started off in sales, realized I didn't like that. And I spent like 6 months on the road with my boyfriend. He was an over-the-road trucker. And I really thought that was interesting, what they did and everything. And that made me want to get into logistics. But that's, you know, that's all. She downplayed it. And I said, that is an amazing story. I said, don't be shy with that. Don't be embarrassed. That's an amazing story. You actually, the way you did that, she never recognized that about herself. She never recognized, she looked at it as a point of embarrassment. I started in sales, and then, you know, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with sales. Nothing wrong when you spent 6 months over the road. That's kind of cool. And that spurred you on to something else. She never looked at her story. She looked at it as an embarrassment, saying, no, one thing led to the next, led to the next. That gave her some power to try some different things. But she never looked at herself that way. I said, no, you've got to think where you came from and where it went. So that's the purpose behind this. What I'm trying to get to here is you need to understand where you came from. You don't have to share it with anybody. You can share it with your best friend 30 years or share it with no one but yourself. But your story is there whether you like it or not. So you have to be in control of it, or at least understand it so it doesn't control you. That's one of those phrases. I should write that down. So Linda, Miss Linda, what do you think? Will you share us your, tell us about yourself?
Well, I don't know. And this might be a blend of both, I suppose, but I would say I'm on a journey of growth and becoming. I started out as the shyest possible kid, and now people wouldn't even know that that was the case, and they probably wouldn't know that I'm an introvert, but I need massive amounts of private time and infusion of privacy and thought in order to function in the world. But I'm excited that all the crazy parts of my past experience are able to come together, and I can help other people to grow their businesses or live their best life, and importantly, to leave a legacy, which is my current one of my current giant passions.
I like that. I like that. It's, once again, and I like that because you're able to share a little bit about where you came from and where you're going. I thought that was kind of cool. So, Miss Kathy, what do you think? Kathy's itching at the bit, chopping at the bit.
Well, gosh, what I want to say is one of your earlier slides, you talked about taking your story and just smoothing kind of the rough edges off of it. And I suppose that's how I see the two versions of my story. I see the first version, or the resume story, is the one that I tell all the time, and I use it in all of my public speaking. And so it's been polished, if you will. And it's all about how I was a single mom, and you know, and I was working 2 minimum wage jobs, and you know, then I had these aha moments, and then I have arrived, and now I want to help you arrive as well. So it's one of those you know, rags to riches kind of stories, which, you know, it seems like everybody in the world loves to hear those, and we all do. We love to see, you know, the underdog succeed and all that stuff. So so it's kind of polished in that way. But the story that I don't tell is all of those painful points that I went through to get to where I am today. And like you said, only my closest family and friends, you know, really see, you know, the heartbreaking story, the parts that are very painful. Right. And there is a time and a place, I think, when you can share some of those. And so I suppose it depends. And I talk all the time about being authentic. So I suppose it really depends on who your audience is. If I were in a group of single moms that were hugely struggling, I would probably, as I like to say, get down into the ditch a little more with them and tell them a little more of the painful parts of my story. Because it would resonate with them, and it would help them connect with me. Like, oh my gosh, she, you know, she does live in my closet and she sees what I'm going through. But if I'm just talking to a group of business folks, it's that nice smoothed off edges story, you know, oh yeah, that was me, but now.
But the big part with you, and I've noticed, because I've known you for a while, is like any story, you only see the pattern looking backwards, okay? And you've done a good job of looking at yourself and understanding yourself where you can blend the two, and you're willing to share like that. And once again, the bigger issue here is not about telling anybody anything. That's none of my business. I could care less. What I care about is, do you understand and do you recognize it? It's that introspective look. It's that looking at yourself, which really hurts. It's not comfortable. It's understanding like for me, when I look at some of the things I've done in the past, I cringe. I had to learn from it. You know, it doesn't make me a bad person. I made mistakes, some intentional, some accident. But it's understanding where you came from. You know, once again, and I like this phrasing, I wrote it down. It's understanding so you can control it and how it helps you move forward. You know, in your Kathy, I'm gonna pick on you, Kathy. In your case, it really explains why and how you move forward. I'm in this situation, realize I've got to do different, and that's what I did. So understanding your story, understanding what happened and why, versus going, it happened. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I want people to understand on that is understanding your story.
Well, and I like this particular slide because it says who you are versus what you do. And one of the things that I realized about myself throughout my story is that I have an uncanny knack of being able to reinvent myself. And I'm not sure where that comes from. I don't know if that comes from, we all are such a conglomerate of everything that goes into us in our lives. So I don't know if it was something I learned from my parents or from a teacher or that I just caught instead of was taught on my way through life. I don't know. But I seem to have an uncanny knack of being able to reinvent myself. So I can go from one lifestyle to another lifestyle by simply making a decision, creating a plan, putting the plan in action. I don't know where that comes from. I'm glad I have that because I meet a lot of people that are really, really stuck. And I suppose if I could sum up at large what I try to do to help my clients as a coach is I try to help them reinvent themselves. Because not normally when they connect with me, one of the big questions is how can I change what I'm doing? How can I change my life? How can I, monetize this blog? How can I build a better business? How can I get into real estate? How can I, they want to reinvent themselves and they don't know how. So I think that's the expertise that I bring to the table is putting together the processes and the steps to reinvent oneself.
The reason I wrote, it's funny, I wrote that sentence for a specific reason. I wrote that because of me. I still struggle to this day with defining myself by what I'm doing. And this may come across a little sexist. I think most men do this. You're defined by what you do. And it's only now that I'm realizing that's not the big issue. And even though I know this, I still feel that that's what I should be defined by. And it's not cool, not a good feeling. So I've got to understand why I'm doing this, where I came from, so I can know how to go forward. So yeah. Okay.
Mason?
Spam.
One cool way of looking at what you just said is we are human beings, not human doings.
I've heard that phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the conditioning. It's all the years I've done this, done that, done this, and defining yourself by what you do, realizing, no, there's more to it than that. And I'll speak to myself. I'll give you right now, case in point. In my job, what I do, I enjoy what I do. I love what I do. I'm happy. I don't want to get promoted. I'm right where I'm at. The problem is, even though I know that this is best for me, I'm happy, there is still part of my mind that I can't control that says, no, you're supposed to be getting promoted. You're supposed to try to climb the ladder. It doesn't matter what it'll do to your family. This is what you're supposed to be doing. No. And so it's that's training. That's years of training being told to act a certain way. And if I look at my story, that's not what's making me happy. So it's understanding that. Yeah. Debbie.
Linda, I was impressed with what you said because I've never heard that before. But could you repeat it? You said human beings.
We're human beings, not human doings.
Human doings. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's dig into something else a little deep. Your satchel. Okay. You know, like a messenger bag, that's what I envision. And do you recognize that you have one? Do you recognize all the resources? That's really what I'm wondering when I talk to folks. So, believe it or not, this is actually sections from my book right here. So to me, a satchel is something, everyone has one. You've in effect got that at your disposal. It actually has everything you need if you look for it, if you want to look for it. The problem is most people don't even try and look for it. In there, the way I picture it, you've got two things in there. You've got these little pebbles of joy, these moments of joy. You've got these rocks of pain and regret and guilt. And what people will do is you will remember the bad stuff more often than you'll remember the good stuff. You'll walk along and you'll grab that bad memory and you'll put it in your bag and you will carry it for years. These little pebbles, you put them in there, hey, I remember this is great. And they're small, but the rocks, just the ugly rocks, you keep putting them in there. And just like a bag, you can take them out and put them away, get rid of them. Most of us don't. We'll pick these things up over the years and we'll put them in our little satchel and it will drag us down for years. You'll walk for miles with it. The problem is we don't take the same amount of time to intentionally try and pick up the good stuff. You know, this is how I view things. Because unfortunately, when I look at things and I talk to people, it is easier to ask someone to tell me about a negative thing than it is to tell me about a positive thing. And they may not always say it, but you see it flash in eyes. That's just my experience. So that's what I mean by a satchel. It's metaphorical, but it's, you know, it's our memory, it's our conscience, it's our heart. So even though it's invisible, it's tangible. So, I mean, when I ask this, when I say this, you know, I see Kathy shaking her head. Examples, you know, do we have any examples you want to share of something like this? Things that people would carry, not necessarily you, but people in general, you know, or someone you know.
Well, Mason, I can share the fact that I don't know if it's partly my age or, as my friend tells me all the time, I'm not forgetful. It just gets crowded out because I have so much that I like to do. I like to be very active mentally and physically. And so sometimes those memories get crowded out. And it seems like the good memories can get crowded out so much easier than the painful ones. And so I personally like to post on Facebook for myself, because Facebook will bring back memories 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I love when those pop up because it reminds me of someplace we either went or an event that we did or a friend that I was with. And it reminds me of those good memories and it keeps it front and center for me. So I try to come up, I guess, in conclusion, I try to come up with ways that bring the good memories that are in my satchel back to my memory, because those are easier to forget for some reason.
Kathy, that's amazing. An amazing analogy of that, because not many people think of it.
Mm-hmm. But I love it when Facebook brings me back those memories, because I'm like, oh, I forgot all about we did that. And oftentimes I'll take my phone and find Mark and I'll go, Mark, look what Facebook showed me this morning. Remember when we did this? And then we'll talk about it. And one of the other things I do is we get a coffee mug every place we go. And this one is Fort Myers, Florida. This one came from my granddaughter. It has butterflies on it, which represents my mother. Anyway, we have a coffee mug collection. And every morning when we drink our coffee, we get to pick where we want to go and we pick a mug from someplace we've traveled to, and then we talk about it. Mark and I sit and have our coffee, and we'll say, hey, remember when we went to Savannah? Hey, do you remember that bookstore we went in? I've got the coffee mug from the bookstore, you know. So anyway, that's another way that I like to try to remember those good memories. And because Ruth and I had a whole conversation on Clubhouse earlier this week, and this is a whole different topic, and I don't want to steer away from what Mason's doing, but we had an entire conversation that the things we think about actually creates our future. And we even took it a step further, the stories we tell ourselves, you know, and oftentimes we tell ourselves, you know, I'm not successful. I can't do that. I'm a loser. You know, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough money. We tell ourselves these stories, and that creates our future. But we took it a step further and we said, here's the question. Does the stories, and this is a whole other mastermind, does the stories that we tell about other people change their future?
Tell about or tell to?
Tell about.
Okay.
Because I'm putting it out there in the universe. You know, let's say I have a girlfriend and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so negative all the time. Oh, I don't understand why she's so negative all the time. And I tell that story. Does it change her future?
Wow.
Or should I tell the story in a more positive way because I'm practicing being positive in my life by remembering the trips that we take, by remembering the Facebook memories. Oh, wasn't that a wonderful time? And I'm constantly telling myself those stories because I want it to create my future. But am I hurting someone else's future by the way I talk about them? Not always to them, but to them as well, but about them. Just when Mark and I are talking, like, oh, yeah. So I have made a decision that I need to, because, you know, sometimes you can slip into that, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's so negative. Well, does that affect her future? You know, maybe I need to rephrase and reframe that and say, you know, oh, I felt like she was a little negative this week. What can I do to help her? What can I do that might make her happy? What memory can I bring to the surface for my girlfriend? So that she doesn't continue to be negative? And would that change her future? So anyway, back to you, Mason. Those are just some of my thoughts.
I would say on that, and that's an excellent point, because that comes back to your story. Okay. The gentleman named David Blanchard wrote this book, The Chair. He actually took over the Og Mandino Foundation, but he wrote this book called The Chair. And my favorite line from it is this: if I talk to you the way you talk to yourself, would you still be my friend? Think about that one. If I talk to you the way you talk to yourself, would you still be my friend? So I guess my question is, and I appreciate that comment, Kathy, is first of all, let me ask you this. This whole mastermind is me trying to develop something. We talked about this, developing your own material. I'm trying to develop an analogy here. So my question for you is, for example, this satchel analogy, does this make sense? Mm-hmm. How people just, we will carry that heavy stuff for years before we put it down. We don't take nearly the amount of time I think we should to say, no, let's look at the small positive things. In my opinion, that's what I've seen too often. Not only from my personal journeys, but just other people I know and have talked with, people I know closely, people I've just met. You know, when you meet that person who in the airport, you're waiting, and all of a sudden you get this long dissertation of the negative. It's like, wow, you know, that's just, you know, things I've seen. So my question is, my question is for you, is this making sense? Am I creating a valid analogy here? Because part of this is developing a mastermind, so I'm going to ask for feedback.
It makes a lot of sense to me, Mason, and sometimes my satchel gets a little heavy, and I have to sit down and purposely empty it out.
Yeah.
I find myself doing that a lot more nowadays as I take my time and get into mindfulness like that, realizing what I don't need to hold on to anymore. So, okay, so what's next? Oh, so I pulled this up. It's interesting. Little article. These are the top 10, common problems in life. Nothing new about these. Nothing weird. Nothing, health, workplace, emptiness, friendship. These are things we hear about all the time on the news, any social media, whatever. We experience them. We have friends who experience them. But to me, when you look at this, okay, all these things, recognize when you're going through these things, or someone is, you're here. Okay. You've survived 100% of the challenges put upon you. You did. You survived them. You may not like the ending, but you survived them and moved on. You survived them. So do you realize how many resources, how much power you have? The bad stuff you've gone through that you didn't like, okay? But you've gone through it. That gives you power for something else. And I am choosing the word power on purpose. I'm not trying to be melodramatic. It is a power. It's more than just a strength. Mm-hmm. Can you recognize how many resources you have? When you go through these times, good and bad, how many resources are available? I mean, my goodness. One of the big things I like is I like YouTube. Because you know what? I get to be coached by Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Brendan Burchard, Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar. All these guys are more than willing to talk to me. It's a lot of power. I think the quote you said, Linda, earlier, from people are human beings, not doings, I think I heard that from Jim Rohn is where I heard it from first. I don't know if he said it. I don't know if he originated it. But we have so much available to us if we can recognize it and help each other recognize it. Kathy, to your point, when you talk to people, you're helping them recognize things. Yeah.
Well, and one of my phrases when I'm coaching all the time is to simply start. So if you could go back a screen to all of the problems, the top 10, when you look at any of those, the health crisis, the workplace issues, emptiness, friendship issues, failure, financial, career pressure, unfair treatment, inner peace, mental health. When you look at any of those 10, one of the first things that I recommend to any of my clients, and this is just such a small, tiny little superpower, but it is a superpower, is if you just take action. It doesn't have to be a big action, but if you just take action. And sometimes if you're finding yourself, let's talk about mental health issues, for example. If you're finding yourself kind of depressed, which I think we all can identify maybe when we're going through a stage of depression, if you just clean out a closet, sometimes if you just make your bed, I mean, sometimes it can be a small action to give you that sense of satisfaction that you're moving forward, that you're pushing through whatever the issue is. And sometimes it's just like a financial crisis. Sometimes it's just such a small little thing. Maybe just not eating out this week. And you've taken an action, you've taken a step in the right direction. And so that's what I always focus on, is what is an action step that to get to your next best step. You don't have to get to the end, just your next best step. And so that's kind of how I function. And that's my little superpower that I have in there that I use for myself all the time.
Appreciate that. Debbie.
Kathy, what was that last part you said? What is an action step? And then what did you say?
Sometimes just taking your next best step. It doesn't have to be all the way to the end, just your next best step.
Okay.
Will start to move you out of any of those 10 or whatever else that, you're carrying around in your satchel. And that seems to be where folks get stuck is sometimes they don't know what their next best step should be. And that's where, coaches come in. But but I've practiced that on myself for years. I just have to stop and think, what is my next best step? And sometimes it's just as simple as, I mean, it can be such a small, tiny little step. Sometimes it could be, I'm just going to go to the coffee shop and I'm going to smile and say hello to everybody that comes in the door. And all of a sudden, my entire mental attitude is changed. So it doesn't have to be a big step.
Yeah.
It just has to be your next best step. And that can be a once you have that in your toolbox, you can start to work through any issue, as long as you know that you have that in your toolbox, that just the next best step is where you need to go.
And Mason, the next slide that you have, that you were showing, talking about your satchel, what is amazing is when my granddaughter was up visiting, she has a bag like this, but she calls it her messenger bag. And it's just like this. And she showed me what she carries in it. And what was interesting was it's all the things that are important to her from back then going forward. Has her journal in there. So when something happens, she can write it right down. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you're talking about this today, and you have brought out so many tremendous key points that it makes a picture, or it creates a picture for me of what a messenger satchel bag is. So I'm just telling you, I'm loving this. This is a great class today.
I've just always liked, I don't carry a purse, but I've always liked bags to put stuff in, to carry stuff with. And so I've actually always liked a messenger bag, a satchel, so I can carry tablets, laptops, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I appreciate that. Okay. I think we're nearing, yep. All right, so.
I had a comment too.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, the things that we're talking about today are so valuable. I have loved the idea of you have survived 100% of the things that have happened to you, because no matter how difficult our lives have been, and each of us has had various kinds of challenges, the fact that we're still here today is a testament to our resilience. And if you're a person of faith, the help of the good Lord above. And also, we are so powerful, and we have no idea how powerful. But the more we pay attention to that and begin to realize how amazing we are and how powerful, it can help to unleash even more awesomeness. And your discussion of what is called the negativity bias, that's a real thing. That's the way we're wired. We tend to focus on the negative in almost any situation. And yeah, it helps us survive because we can try to avoid those things. But we also need to focus on the idea that thoughts are things. And tying into what Kathy said, it may be that we're even influencing the outcome of other people, but we're certainly influencing the outcome of our lives by the thoughts that we allow to play and replay in our minds. So we truly want to pay attention to what we're thinking, because those are the building blocks of our future. And I heard a quote the other day, I have no idea who may have originated it, but they said, "You are the only person who has the power to stop you." And yes. If we realize that our thoughts can be the beginning and the ending of what's going to happen in our lives, and kind of free ourselves from those shackles, I think it's going to be amazing to see where we go and who we can become.
I would agree, definitely.
Great stuff, Linda.
Thank you.
So once again, I do have your emails. In this case, and I'm going to send you power thoughts. I've got some more challenge questions. Now, what I did not do is I'm not going to ask you about any answers to the questions the prior time. These are up to you. I want to give you guys some things to think about, to take notes on, and that's where I'm trying to go with these. So I will send you some more today. And next time is August 25th. And we're only talking about one topic next time, and that's what I call the dark forest. So that's where we're going next time.
That title brings a lot of thought. And I'm looking for a certain word. Kathy, help me out.
I think it's your days in the wilderness.
Yes.
I think we've all had a period in our life that we may have needed some help to get through it, because we couldn't, as they say, we couldn't see the forest for the trees, and we were kind of stuck there. And I remember those days, being a single mom. I remember those days.
And isn't it interesting what little thing can occur or be said that will immediately trigger that? And I think it goes right along with what Linda was saying. When that happens, what do you do with it? Do you just tuck it away to forget about it again? Or do you do something about it? Or, that's kind of where I'm going with that.
That's exactly it. That's why it's a section by itself.
Yeah, this is going to be some deep conversation next time. So, Mason, great job. This was a wonderful topic, wonderful material. You did a great job facilitating. For those that are listening in, not only are we doing a mastermind, but we're learning how to do a mastermind and work with our audience. And Mason, the one thing that I noticed is that you would suggest ahead of time who you were going to call on next. And so that's going to work really well for you when you have 25 in the room instead of just the 3 of us. And that way, folks that are introverts, which of course I am one as well, but I've learned to kind of push myself out front, just like Linda. But at the end of the day, you're going to have some introverts that have not been in the public eye, and they are going to be very shy. And it's going to give them some time to think about what they want to say, or to tell you that they want to pass. And so that was a good point where you would kind of mention ahead of time who you were going to call on next. So I like that.
It's interesting. So my daughter is an actress. She's done lots and lots of plays. And her boyfriend is actually a DJ on a local radio station. And I've talked to each of them about, do they recognize how powerful that is? They can talk in front of other people. And both of them kind of blow it off. They don't realize how difficult that is. And what's interesting is just this week at work, they do periodic training type things. And this week's topic was how to speak in public, how to give a presentation, because that is on the top 5 list of most fears for people, is how to talk to others, how to talk in public. And they don't recognize that. So the introverts, that's what I was trying to say. Okay, let's give you a heads up, and then I can gauge from reactions then. So, and they can
Good job. Debbie or Linda, do either of you have a comment on what you want to say to Mason about his facilitating and his presentation?
I'll go ahead. I feel like, Mason, you were a lot more comfortable this time. I feel like your pacing was better. Like, I don't know if relaxed is the word we want, but last time you were pushing through the material a little bit more. And this time you were letting it be, let's say, a little bit more organic, and you were able to interact and react with each of us in a way that you didn't seem like you were slavishly pushing through an outline. So it was very good.
Yeah, and that comes with experience too. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can tell that you're very comfortable with your material. You've given it so much thought, to the point that you've written a book and you've put together this slide deck. You're just very conversant with the material. And so that comes through as well.
Thank you.
Mason, you've created a mastermind where you're pulling people, or not pulling, but you're helping people create a thought. You're helping them dig deep into their mind. And you're creating, to me, you created enthusiasm into answering these questions that I never thought about. And that you drew this out of people that are like me. You never thought about it that way. And so you're intrigued to answer that. Take the time to look at these questions. And I have to admit, this week was so I want to say three things. Much better, and you were clear about your questions, but yet you wanted to pull us into it, or not pull us, bring us into this, so that it created conversation between all of us. So kudos to you for doing this. And you are more relaxed than last month. And you, is there going to be more to this, the forest, or is that basically the book?
Well, the whole mastermind is based on the book. And okay. Remember, it literally did start with me waking up one day in a crappy steel mill job, working 100-hour weeks. I was a zombie. I was a rotten person. And yet I had been an Air Force officer. I worked at Pentagon. I've been a Fortune 100 consultant. And now I'm just killing myself. And technically I'm making lots of money, but I was miserable. And I'm looking at classmates of mine from school who I knew them when we started off the same. And I'm looking at them and they are so much farther, and I'm using quotes again, in their careers than I am. What the heck was wrong with me? How did I get here? I can tell you technically how I got there and why I did things. But then I'm experiencing going, and trust me, there was a lot of other colorful adjectives in there. This was literally started off as me, a journal, asking these questions. And I don't think I'm the only one in this journey. You know, these different things. And Kathy talks about reinventing yourself. That's just choosing a different path. Me, I stayed on the same path way too long and I complained about it. But the fact is, because I stayed on it, it's my choice. It was my fault. And that's all I'm really talking about. And these are things I've talked to people I hear about. You know, I talk to folks who have regrets. It's like they're carrying around these heavy weight. You know, I've heard that phrase, we're carrying around a heavy weight. That's where the idea of rocks came from. And yet when you look at it, if I say, tell me, if I were to say right now, okay, in fact, let's try this. Linda, tell me 5 good things, tell me 5 bad things. Go.
5 good things, like in my life right now, or just anything good?
Why do you have to pause to think that?
Yeah, I don't know.
And what came to your mind first when I said that, a good or a bad thing?
Good.
Good. So But you see, we had to pause and think about that. I mean, I'm not going to put you on the spot to list it, but if you ask someone that, I have found, and maybe it's, and I'm not around a bunch of, you know, I try and talk to people. Sadly, a lot of the negative stuff comes up first. Now, I'm not going to make you list that, Linda. I'm just playing with you. But if you ask that, I wonder what comes to mind first. I wonder which list can be written down faster in your head. It's a question I have for people. I'm not going to ask you, like, put you on the spot, but that's the question.
It's where you choose to live.
Yes.
And then you're gonna deepen those grooves, so to speak, you know?
Exactly. I'm sorry, Debbie. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Mason or Linda, that's exactly how I felt when he asked me the question right in the beginning of the session. I was like, but to answer your question, Mason, honestly, my first instinct answer was my childhood. So it was my past. And that was bad. So I'm liking the analogy of what you're saying, because automatically what we're seeing is that most people automatically go to the bad, not the good, because that's the initial reaction. Am I going right along with what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's not, and the worst part is some people would view that as a character statement. It's not. It's how you view things. It's how you put things in perspective. Like I said, that's where this all came from.
I just want to say to Debbie, you know, even though your mind went to that, I mean, that's foundational literally foundational in your life. But how amazing are you that you have overcome the things in your past to be, you know, the happy person that you are, the grandmother who dotes over 9 grandchildren, and the person who is building as a professional woman and creating impact on others. So, you know, in each of our tapestries, there are dark colored threads and light colored threads. And your tapestry is beautiful.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. That's just made my day.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, that's where we're at.
I love it. I love it. Any last comments before we go? This has been great. Mason,
thank you, Mason.
Yes, thank you so much, Mason. I am actually looking forward to the next session. Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation coming up. So I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to Mason leading us through that conversation. So I
Great
appreciate
work,
it,
Mason. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes.
Okay. Well, perfect. Mason gave you the next date, so put it on your calendar, and everyone have a great weekend. I'm off to our Rib and Jazz Fest weekend here. We've got our city is being overrun by tourists. I've got a waiting list for rooms a mile long, and two of the bands are actually staying at our bed and breakfast. So yeah, this is going to be a crazy busy weekend, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm only 2 blocks from downtown, so I'll get to hear all the music. And then I get to go eat fair food this weekend. Look at Debbie. Yeah. I don't do that very often, but when it comes to town, it's like, okay, I'm going to at least go down and do it once. Yeah.
Fried something on a stick, right?
Yep, something. Yeah, at least once. Yes, absolutely. All right, guys, we'll see everybody next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.